Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. And today we're going to talk all about books and writing books and becoming authors. So, for the audience out there that's interested in, that's ever wanted to write book, either fiction, nonfiction, get their product out there, Michele Defilippo is here to talk about that. And she's got a really interesting story and a background, and she's got a lot of experience for the audience. And I'm really happy to welcome her to the show. So, Michele, welcome.
Well, thank you, Dr. Lou. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, we love to keep the podcast informal, so we all go by first names. So tell us more about your um journey and how you got to be doing what you're doing.
Well, I've been in the publishing industry in one form or another for 52 years now.
Wow.
So I've seen just about everything that's happened in the publishing industry in that time, as you can imagine. It's been quite a roller coaster. But starting in 2001, I opened 1106 Design, my current company, because independent publishing was becoming very popular. And the original message of independent publishing was that the author was the publisher and kept full control of the book and kept all of the profits from book sales. Since that time, the field has become a lot more complicated. So the reason I wanted to start doing these podcasts is to remind people of that original indie publishing model, that you really do not need a publisher. And I can go into a little bit about how that works and why it's not beneficial to authors to use a publisher.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting, and I was gonna ask you because I self-publish my four books and I get to keep all the profits and I split it with Amazon. I don't have to go through any gatekeeper. I never had to go through what do you call it, a book agent or all of this, and I market it on social media. So there's this whole difference between self-publishing and publishing, traditional publishing, and I'm pretty sure that most of the audience is aware of that, so we're not going to go into that. But talk about this kind of the landscape. Are more and more authors just kind of using the internet and social media to write their books and not really having to go through this centralized process?
No, I think the issue more than anything else is that all authors need services to produce their book, right? Editors, designers, proofreaders, ebook formatters, and all the rest. But in the industry now, there's all these, and the idea is, it sounds like you've done it the correct way, where you upload your files to Amazon and then you sell your books. That's perfect. That's exactly what I espouse. But there's a lot of people who enter self-publishing now and they don't know that you can do that. And if you go to Google, the only thing you will find is so-called publishing companies. But what they do is they charge the author to produce the book, to provide the services like we would provide. And then they also charge the author on the back end every time a book is sold. So
Um,
that doesn't work out too well for the author,
yeah.
even under the best of circumstances. And of course, there's been some of these companies that most everybody's heard of that have famously just collapsed and left tens of thousands of authors in the dust. And so it's unfortunate. So I'm
Mhm.
here to remind people, you don't need a publisher.
Yeah.
You are the publisher.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, so one thing that I found in my journey self-publishing is one is an editor, and then because that was money well spent, and she designed the cover, she edited, she uploaded everything, and like I said, this is money well spent. Like, I know people that do everything from themselves, but then like the kind of the cover looks weird and doesn't look professional. So it's an investment, it's an expense, but you can recoup that very quickly. The situation that you were talking about earlier, is that's with independent authors, or is that with the traditional publishing route?
Well, the original traditional publishing route was that the publisher paid for all of the experts to produce the book. And then, of course, they deserved a return on their investment. So when a book was sold, they would keep most of the revenue and give the author a small royalty. That's just ordinary business, right? And then independent publishing, as it was originally intended, was that the author was the publisher. The author would hire the experts, and the author would receive 100% of the revenue when a book is sold. But now, like I said, there's this middle ground there now where there's publishers and hybrid publishers and self-publishing companies and a whole spectrum of providers in the middle ground now that do both. They charge the author to produce the book and they take the money on the back end.
Oh, okay. So,
Yeah. So that's not so hot.
so essentially, you're eliminating the agent that brings it to the publisher, but it's still the same model. It's still this very centralized parasitic model that just takes it. Talk about so in this area of decentralization, where we're trying to get rid of middlemen, just useless middlemen. Um, Talk about this idea of maintaining rights, because with the traditional publishing route, it sounds like you basically had no control. They basically, once it was in the publisher's hands, they controlled it. And with independent indies, like it's now you control it. You decide where it gets distributed. You decide how it gets sold. You own 100% of the rights. Talk about that.
That's correct. In traditional publishing, the publisher is actually buying your rights. You wrote the book, they're buying the rights to publish it. So, yes, the author does lose control. The author doesn't have very much to say about what the cover looks like or what the title is, anything. The major publishers will take complete control of that. And they'll publish the book for a time and they'll push it for a time, but then it goes to the backlist and very little happens because they have to always get on to the next bestseller. So indie publishing, the author has all the responsibilities, the author keeps all the rights, and the author keeps all the revenue. Unless they get misdirected into this middle ground where they're working with a publisher who charges them to produce the book and then also takes money on the back end.
I got it.
So we're an author services company. I've got a nice team here that helps authors with the professional level services that they need. We get them set up with their own indie publishing POD accounts, but we do not take a penny of their revenue when the book is sold.
I see. Yeah. So it's important for the audience to kind of distinguish when they're working with these agencies, to ask about the fees and also ask about, control of the ownership and the rights. These are all intellectual property. These are very important concepts. Let's see here. So this is interesting. We'll talk about somebody's going to write a book. How should they go? They've got the rough draft. Now what do they do?
Okay, the next step, as you know, is usually editing. So if they were to come to us, we would start with an editorial evaluation to just give them an overview of what the manuscript might need to bring it up to industry standards. And then we would do editing and cover design and interior design and typesetting, which is not formatting. I could talk for a couple of days about that. And then ebook formatting, and then the upload to the author's print on demand accounts. And that in that way, the author keeps complete control. And when a book is sold, the payment is sent directly to the author's bank account, never to ours.
In terms of platforms and formats, because what's interesting was I started out with paperback, and then eventually I moved into Kindle and hardback, and now it's on audio. So it's on all different formats. But my first book was published in 2018, and I've noticed that the consumption habits, over the last 6 years have drastically changed because people are consuming podcasts and they've got YouTube, and kind of books are kind of going from like top of mind to kind of like, people want to skim books and, get the cliff notes and, they can get bits and pieces from Twitter and all of that. So talk about this change in consumption habits and how it affects the book publishing industry.
Well, that's wanting our information in small bits and pieces is a trend, definitely. I'm not sure it's a good one, but we're all multitasking. And I think that's partly responsible for the rise in podcasts and audiobooks because you can do two things at once. I still can't do two things at once. I'm just not capable of that. But I suppose you could work out at the gym and listen to an audiobook, and then you're doing two things at once. But interestingly enough, I've been in the business long enough to see ebooks when they first came out. There's been at least 3 generations of ebooks, and every time they all predicted that print books were going to go away. And they haven't. People still like a real book. So I usually tell my clients to release the books release your book in as many formats as you can afford to.
Yeah.
Right. It's expensive to do print and ebook and audiobook. That's beyond some people's ability. But
Yeah.
if you can do that, then you're giving the buyer the choice of what format they prefer instead of making the choice for them.
Yeah. And a lot of individuals less because like when I got print, I would go to the conferences and sell them there. And then actually, Amazon you can get an author print for like I think it's like $2 or whatever,
Mhm.
like good margin. And then it can also list on Amazon. But like the predominant way that people really are reading books now is Kindle. Like they like the print sales have gone down, but Kindle has gone up and Audible is starting to rise and which is really interesting. We've got deciding again, these are high level concept. We've got an editor, we've published it, we've decided what where should people list their files on? Is it Amazon, Barnes and Noble? Should they go? I know a lot of authors they booked a place in like a library and just to talk about their book and made sales that way. So what's the best way to market?
Well, that really depends on the author. I mean, going to the library, holding book signings, and so forth is marketing, right? But we recommend two platforms: KDP, which is owned by Amazon, and that's where you're going to sell 80% of your books. And then there's another platform called Ingram Spark, and they feed the physical bookstores, the wider distribution network, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, libraries, other retailers. And so by using both of those platforms together, you can get the widest distribution at the lowest cost.
Yeah, I love that Ingram Spark. I use KDP, but isn't there is there a non-compete between if you list it on Amazon and you can't list it anywhere else? Is that from what I understand, or is that an incorrect assumption?
No, Amazon does do that. They punish you if you want to distribute your book anywhere, uh, your audiobook and your ebook anywhere else. Not so much with print books, but for ebooks, for example, you can get a 70% royalty from Amazon if you agree to give them exclusivity. If you don't want to give them exclusivity and you want your ebook to be distributed on all the other platforms, then they cut you down to 35%. I always say go wide,
Yeah,
right? Because you never know where a sale is going to come from. Why cut off that channel? And
yeah.
it's not like Amazon does anything to promote your book. No, if they did something for that 70%, I think they'd be on firmer ground, but they don't.
And so these are kind of for the audience. I know some people they also host it on their have the digital file on their website, and people can purchase and get a download that way, or actually get a physical copy. Website, email marketing, newsletter, these email lists, and all these things are kind of traditional ways of leveraging. There's book signings, a lot of different ways. Which the next question I have is, which is really interesting, is the books published and talk about, a lot of people they think that they're going to get rich off their books, but it's actually, books lead to other things. Talk about that.
Yes, and the other things are more profitable without a doubt. I don't know if you remember the name Dan Pointer. He was the original guru who really started self-publishing and realized the opportunity that it represented. And he used to tell the joke that bookstores are a lousy place to sell books. And he was right because the bookstore takes 40 to 55% of your cover price,
Uh-huh.
whether they're online or brick and mortar. And so if you can develop channels to sell your books directly, you're way ahead of the game in that regard. Same thing, Amazon and all the book retailers will list your book, but they don't necessarily do anything to promote it. The key is to find your audience and sell as many books directly as you can.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Talk about 1106 design. What makes 1106 design stand out from other services, other businesses, and how can interested authors get in touch about if they're interested in writing a book?
Okay, well, if you go online again to Google, you'll find how many, all kinds of cover designers and people who can help you. Everybody, me and everybody on my team started out in traditional publishing many years ago. So we all have that. We were all trained in what I think of as the right way to produce a book. We work at that level. When we finish with your book, you will not be able to distinguish it from a traditionally published book. It's top drawer. And we believe that books should be top drawer, and they are a work of art on the part of the author and then on our part. And so that's the right way to produce a book. You'll find, of course, every level of service in the marketplace if you just go out there. But I've got a team of people assembled so you can have one contact point, one efficient way to produce your book without trying to manage 5 or 7 people to do it. We do that for you with one easy point of contact.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. How can people reach out to you and find out more about your services and check you out and follow you?
My website is 1106design.com, and we believe in complete transparency. So if you go there, you will find all of our services, all of our prices, design samples, educational articles. And if you want to subscribe to our newsletter, you can get a free copy of my book, Published Like the Pros. You download it for free, and then you can unsubscribe if you don't want the newsletter. I get that. But what my little booklet does is give a brief overview of the way we think a book ought to be published and what's important and what's the steps, and do
Yeah,
it the right way so that you make the most profit.
yeah. And for all the audience out there, let's thank Michelle for coming on and again talking about the traditional book publishing services and with that, be sure to give her a like and follow on all of her social media and check out her website. And thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Chris.